Hi, my name's Odalyn. I thought moving in with my husband's family would give my daughter stability. Instead, during a live stream, my sister-in-law poured superglue on her head, and my mother-in-law laughed, calling it a trendy hairstyle. My little girls screamed, and they told me it was just a joke, but that was only the beginning. They thought I'd stay silent. They thought I'd keep letting them laugh at her pain. Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening to this? And where are you? Drop a comment below, because by the end, you'll see why the day I walked out made them cry, scream, and beg. The smell of hairspray lingered in the air as I stood in the kitchen, setting out a plate of crackers I knew no one would eat. The walls felt too close, the laughter from the living room too loud. Marla's live stream was in full swing, her voice carrying like she owned the house, because in her mind, she did. I tried to stay quiet, invisible, keeping busy so I wouldn't be accused of ruining the vibe. Avarice sat on the carpet nearby, her little silver comb glinting under the lamp as she carefully brushed her hair. She always did that when she felt nervous, when the noise got too heavy. Her big eyes watched the screen, but she didn't say a word. She didn't have to. I knew what silence meant. Marla laughed into the camera, hair perfectly curled, teeth white under the ring light. "You guys, thanks for tuning in," she chirped, tossing her hair like she was auditioning for some reality show. I heard the ping-ping of the comments flying in. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and leaned toward the hall. I didn't want to be on camera, but I needed to check on Avaris. Just then, Marla's tone shifted. It got sharper, cutting. "Why are you staring, kid?" she said, eyes darting toward Avaris. My heart sank. Before I could move, Marla grabbed a bottle off the side table. At first I thought it was more hairspray, but then I saw the thick nozzle, the hard plastic tube. My chest tightened. "Let's give you a new look," she laughed, popping the cap. "Marla! No!" I shouted, already running, but it was too late. The clear liquid spilled, glistening under the light as it poured straight onto my daughter's hair. Avarice's scream cut through the room like glass breaking. She clawed at her head, tears streaking her face. The comments on the screen flew faster. Some were laughing emojis, others typed LOL or OMG savage. "What happened?" I cried, dropping to my knees and pulling her toward me. The smell hit, chemical and sharp. Her little comb clattered to the floor. Marla shrugged, her voice flat. "Relax, it's just a joke." She was staring too long. "Just a joke." From the couch, Verena cackled, her voice slicing through the chaos. "At least it looks trendy." "Could be the next hairstyle, huh?" She popped a handful of chips into her mouth like my child wasn't writhing in pain 2 feet away. "Are you insane?" My hands trembled as I tried to wipe at Avaris's head, but the glue was already hardening, her hair clumped together in sticky strands. Marla tilted her head, the picture of smug. "You're overreacting." "She'll be fine. Stop being so dramatic, Odalyn." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something crack inside me. I had been quiet for years, swallowing the barbs, the laughter, the just a jokes. But not with Avarice, not when she screamed like that. I scooped her up, ignoring the phone camera still streaming to whoever wanted to watch this train wreck. The chat was still scrolling, laughing faces, mocking words. My chest burned. As I headed for the door, Verena's voice followed, sharp as a blade. "Don't you dare ruin this evening, Odalyn. You'll apologize for that outburst later. To the viewers, too. You embarrassed your sister-in-law." I didn't look back. Avaris buried her face into my shoulder, her sobs muffled against my shirt. I held her tighter, every step heavier than the last. My pulse pounded in my ears. We stepped out of that living room, out of the bright lights and fake smiles, and I knew nothing would ever be the same again. That night, I wrapped Avaris in the thickest blanket I could find and carried her out into the cool Houston air. The streetlights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows as we walked. Her little arms clung around my neck, her face buried against me. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I couldn't stop moving. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Does it hurt forever?" The words hit me harder than the weight in my arms. I glanced down at her, her eyes wide and wet, and shook my head slowly. "Not forever, sweetheart." I tried to sound steady, though my throat was tight. As I shifted her, something slipped from her pocket and hit the pavement with a faint clatter. It was her silver comb, the one she always held when she was nervous. I bent to pick it up, gripping it tightly in my free hand. That tiny comb had seen more tears than I cared to admit. The urgent care clinic was still a couple of miles away. My old car sat useless in the driveway, out of gas and ignored by the family who pretended it was theirs to borrow whenever convenient. Tonight, I didn't care. I would walk every mile if I had to. By the time we reached the glass doors, my arms ached, and my chest was burning from holding her so close. Inside, the sharp scent of antiseptic met us. A nurse at the desk looked up, her eyes widening when she saw Avaris's hair matted, hardened, and clumped against her scalp. "Oh, honey," the nurse breathed, standing quickly. "What happened to her?" For a moment, I froze. The words felt like stones on my tongue. I could have lied, said it was an accident, that she'd spilled something on herself. But looking at the kindness in that woman's eyes, I couldn't. Not this time. "Family," I whispered, my voice breaking. She didn't ask for more. She just nodded and guided us gently toward an exam room. The doctor came in quickly, examining Avaris with careful hands. "The glue's irritating her scalp," he said softly, "but no permanent damage. We'll treat it. She'll be okay." Relief washed over me like a tide, though it carried sadness with it. She was safe tonight, but the wound wasn't just on her skin. At the counter, I counted out the last of my money, 32 crumpled dollars, for the medication. My fingers shook as I slid the bills across. The nurse caught my eye, her expression holding more silent empathy than my own family had given me in years. No speeches, no pity, just understanding. It was enough to make my chest ache in a different way. Back outside, the air was colder. I balanced the paper bag of medication under one arm and shifted Avaris on my hip. As I adjusted, my phone buzzed. Against my better judgment, I glanced at the screen. It was a notification. Marla had gone live again. My breath caught as I tapped it open. There she was, grinning into the camera like nothing had happened. "Can you believe some people can't take a joke?" she laughed. From off-screen, I heard Verena's voice, sharp and cruel. "Too dramatic. That girl always was." The comments poured in, scrolling faster than I could read. Laughing emojis, snide remarks, viewers making jokes about glue hair. I shoved the phone into my pocket, my stomach twisting. They hadn't just hurt my daughter. They wanted the world to laugh about it. We stepped into the dark street again, the lights behind us fading. Avaris shifted, her small voice barely audible. "Are we going back?" I tightened my grip on her, staring straight ahead at the long, empty road. My mouth opened, but no words came out. The answer stuck in my throat, heavy with fear and defiance. I wanted to tell her we'd never go back, but part of me still feared I'd have no choice. That fear kept me awake most of the night, staring at the exposed beams of the garage ceiling while Avaris finally drifted into restless sleep beside me. By morning, the pale Texas sun cut through the small, dusty window, landing across the old mattress Lenora had lent us. I tucked the blanket tighter around Avaris, brushing her hair gently with my fingers where the glue had stiffened the strands. My chest ached every time I touched her scalp, knowing what had been done in front of thousands of strangers. Just as I thought she might sleep a little longer, a sharp knock rattled the thin metal garage door. The sound vibrated straight through me. I froze. Another knock came, harder this time, followed by a voice I knew too well. "You've cried enough," Verena's words sliced through the quiet. "Come back before you flood my floor with your tears." I held my breath, pressing Avaris closer as if I could shield her from that voice. My hands trembled, but I didn't move to open the door. Then she continued, her tone coated with disdain. "Marla turned out stronger than you. That's why she deserves more." Those words, stronger, deserves, burned. They'd been my curse since childhood. Sensitive, weak, not enough. I'd heard them so often they'd carved a scar across my soul. Beside me, Averis stirred. Her small hand clutched mine tightly. In a whisper, fragile but firm, she said, "Please don't." It was enough. My hand fell from the lock. I stayed still, even as Verena's voice called again, mocking and commanding in turns. After several long minutes, the footsteps faded, leaving behind only silence and the echo of shame. I leaned back against the cold wall, memories rushing in uninvited. I saw myself at 9 years old, standing at the edge of our backyard pool. Marla had shoved me in, laughing as I splashed and choked, panic clawing at my throat. Verena's voice had cut through my fear then, too. "You need to toughen up." She hadn't helped. She'd laughed with Marla. That day, I learned my pain was entertainment, and it seemed nothing had changed. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. I hesitated, then picked it up, already dreading what I'd see. A voice note from Marla. My thumb hovered before I tapped play. "Tell your creepy little gremlin not to stare again." Marla's voice dripped with venom, casual and cruel. Lucky I didn't use hairspray. My stomach turned. My fingers shook as I hit block, the finality of the motion sending a strange calm through me. I set the phone down, breathing slowly, forcing my pulse to steady. Across the room, an old spiral notebook lay half buried under a box of rusty tools. I reached for it, pulling it into my lap. The cover was torn, the pages yellowed, but it was blank. I picked up a half-broken pencil from the shelf and opened to the first page. I began to write. Short, jagged lines at first, but then words formed. Promises. I will not let them laugh at her pain again. My handwriting wavered, but the words were firm. It was the first time in years I'd put into writing what I'd always told myself silently. The garage was still, save for the sound of my pencil scratching across paper. Avarice shifted beside me, her breath slowing as she fell back into sleep. I leaned close, brushing the hair from her forehead. "We'll rise from this," I whispered into the quiet. I didn't know how, not yet. But I knew we would. The air smelled of dust and motor oil, the silence heavy but no longer suffocating. For the first time, I felt a flicker of control, even in this cramped, borrowed space. As I set the notebook aside, I kissed the top of Averis's head, my resolve hardening like steel. And that night, I realized silence could be my greatest weapon. And in the weeks that followed, I learned just how heavy that silence could be. Our new attic room above the auto shop was nothing fancy. The paint peeled in strips from the walls, the ceiling slanted so low I had to duck near the window, and the air smelled faintly of oil and dust. But there was a lock on the door. There was quiet. To me, that meant peace, even if it wasn't luxury. Every morning, I woke Avarice before the sun was fully up. She'd squint against the dim light from the small window, yawning as I brushed her hair carefully, mindful of the tender patches the doctor said would take time to heal. "Mom," she whispered one morning, her voice groggy but hopeful. "It doesn't hurt as much today." I smiled, though my chest tightened. "Good. That's what we want." I packed her school lunch in a brown paper bag I folded neatly, adding a tiny note each day. Just 3 words. "I love you." Sometimes I'd draw a silly little heart or a flower. She tucked them into her desk at school, and I told myself those notes might become her anchor when the world felt cruel. While she was in class, I worked double shifts at the diner. The uniform smelled of coffee and bacon grease no matter how many times I washed it. My hands stayed red from scrubbing dishes, but I told myself it was worth it. Every dollar meant another week of safety. My phone buzzed constantly in my apron pocket, but I ignored it. Dozens of missed calls. Some voicemails I didn't dare open. I'd already blocked Marla and Verena on every platform I could think of. Their voices had haunted enough of my nights. I wasn't about to let them creep back into my days. Instead, I focused on what I could control. I scraped together enough to pay for therapy sessions for Averis twice a month. She rarely said much to the counselor, but I watched her drawings change. At first, her superheroes always had one eye closed, like they couldn't face the world. Slowly, more of them had both eyes open. It wasn't much, but it was hope. After the diner closed each night, I took the bus across town to a community college. I'd signed up for night classes in child psychology. Maybe it was foolish, maybe I was chasing something too big, but sitting in those classrooms reminded me I wasn't stuck. I wasn't only what they said I was. Still, the world had a cruel way of reminding me. One evening, while refilling coffee for a couple at the diner, I overheard a whisper from the booth behind me. "Isn't she the one from that live stream?" My stomach dropped. I kept my head down, pretending not to hear, though the heat in my face betrayed me. The woman giggled softly. "Yeah, that's her. Poor thing." I wanted to disappear right then, but Lenora, my coworker who'd lent me the attic room, slipped a folded napkin into my pocket when no one was looking. Later, I opened it and read her scrawled words. "Keep going. They'll expose themselves." It was the first time in weeks I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone. But the internet had no mercy. Scrolling through my phone during a quick break, I saw Marla's latest post. A photo of her in some chic outfit, hair perfectly styled, captioned, "Healing Era." Some people are too dramatic to handle real life. The comments were filled with laughing emojis and little digs that I knew were meant for me. My blood simmered, but I put the phone down before I could respond. Silence, I reminded myself. Silence has weight. Later that night, after the last customer left and the diner lights dimmed, I sat alone at the counter, staring at the phone lying face down beside me. I thought about calling someone, CPS, the police, anyone. I imagined telling them everything. But then the voice in my head reminded me, they'll cover for each other. They always have. I wiped down the counter slowly, breathing in the scent of lemon cleaner. My reflection in the window looked tired, older than my years, but under the weariness, I saw something else too. Resolve. When I finally climbed the narrow stairs to the attic, Avarice was asleep, her little notebook of drawings lying open beside her. I sat on the edge of the mattress and picked up my own notebook, the one I'd started in the garage. I wrote 4 words slowly, pressing the pencil hard enough to dent the page. Not justice, consequence. That night, I wrote in my notebook, not justice, consequence. The pencil marks were so deep I could feel the grooves when I ran my fingers over the page. It wasn't about making them sorry. It was about making sure they couldn't laugh at my daughter's pain ever again. Months slipped by, each one heavy with work and survival. My days started before dawn and ended long after the last bus stopped running. I worked doubles at the diner, pancakes and coffee for the early crowd, burgers and pie for the late-night regulars. On weekends, I picked up babysitting gigs for a neighbor. Every spare hour I could steal went to my night classes in trauma recovery. I wasn't doing it for a career. I was doing it because I needed tools. For Avarice. For myself. Our attic room hadn't changed much. Still peeling paint, still drafty, but something inside it had shifted. Avarice had begun sleeping through the night more often. She started humming to herself when she colored. Little things. Precious things. One night after she'd curled up beside me under our thin blanket, she whispered, "Mom, you're like a superhero." My throat tightened. I brushed a strand of hair from her face and kissed her forehead. Superheroes get tired too, you know. "But you don't quit," she murmured, eyes already drifting closed. I couldn't answer. I just turned to my notebook and wrote, "I will never let anyone laugh at her pain again." It became my private oath. Every time I wanted to collapse under the weight of bills, exhaustion, or the gnawing fear that Verena might show up again, I reread those words. They steadied me. Slowly, I began to see small changes in Avarice. At the free clinic's group therapy, where I sat quietly at the back, she finally answered when the counselor asked about her favorite color. "Blue," she said softly. My eyes filled, but I blinked back the tears. I didn't want her to see me cry. She needed strength, not sorrow. She even started calling me Mama again instead of whispering or avoiding the word altogether. The first time it slipped out, we were standing in line at the grocery store, and I almost dropped the milk jug I was holding. But peace never lasted long when it came to my family. One afternoon, during my short break at the diner, I checked my phone and saw a voicemail from Verena. My finger hovered over the play button, then I pressed it. Her voice filled the small back room. "We're family, Odalyn. Stop being dramatic. You owe us rent for all those years under my roof. Don't think you can just walk away and play the victim. Call me back." I didn't listen to the rest. I deleted it, dropped the phone face down, and took a deep breath. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from anger. That evening, Marla went live again. I didn't want to watch, but curiosity got the better of me. She was sitting in her perfectly lit room, smiling into the camera, talking about what she called tough love parenting. "Sometimes," she told her followers, "you've got to teach kids not to be weak. Life's not going to baby them. Some people," her smirk sharpened, "are too dramatic to handle real life, but not me." The comments scrolled fast, laughing emojis, clapping hands, messages praising her for being real. My chest burned. I didn't type a single word. Instead, I quietly screenshotted the stream, saving every frame. When my shift ended that night, I sat at the empty diner counter, lights dimmed, the smell of coffee lingering in the air. I looked at the phone lying in front of me and whispered, "Not yet, but soon." I wasn't chasing justice anymore. I knew better. Justice could be twisted, bought, or ignored. But consequences? Those I could create. They thought my silence meant weakness. They were wrong. A year had gone by since the night I walked out of that house with avarice in my arms, glue hardening in her hair, and the sound of their laughter burning in my ears. Life hadn't been easy, but for the first time in years, it was ours. We had a tiny apartment above an auto shop, 2 rooms with squeaky floors and a window that rattled when trucks drove by. But it was quiet, and it was safe. Or at least, I thought it was. It was a Tuesday morning when I found the envelope. Plain, unmarked, slipped under our door while we slept. My stomach twisted as I picked it up, half expecting another ugly note from Verena or one of Marla's pathetic attempts to scare me back into silence. But when I opened it, I froze. The handwriting was familiar, curved, elegant letters I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. Agatha Reverne, my grandmother-in-law. She'd passed away almost 2 years ago. I sat down hard on the edge of our worn couch, the envelope trembling in my hands. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. My breath caught as I read, "Odalyn, you remind me of myself, unwanted but unbreakable. I watched them treat you the way they once treated me, and I knew I couldn't leave this world without making sure someone stopped the cycle. I left everything to Avaris. Protect him. Do not let them break him the way they tried to break us." My vision blurred. My fingers clenched around the page as if letting go would make the words vanish. I whispered aloud, "Everything to Avaris?" The weight of it hit me like a storm. This wasn't just a letter. This was a will, a lifeline, and a burden. That evening, as I tucked Avaris into bed, she asked in her small, careful voice, "Mama, are we going to be okay now?" She brushed her little silver comb through her hair, the same one that had fallen on the sidewalk that awful night. I watched her hands, steady but still too thin, and swallowed hard. I kissed her forehead. We're always going to find a way. But inside, I wasn't sure what okay meant anymore. The next day, the storm began. My voicemail filled with Verena's sharp voice. "You can't let them do this. Jesse doesn't even understand what a will is. That money belongs to the family, not to some child." The desperation in her tone almost made me laugh, but my hands shook as I deleted each message without replying. Marla went online that same evening, her smile plastered over her bitterness. "Funny how some people think they can steal legacies meant for real family," she told her followers. "I guess some folks just thrive on drama." Her comments section exploded with support from her fans, many of whom knew nothing about what she'd done. But I noticed a few new remarks slipping in. Wasn't she the one who poured glue on that kid's head? Didn't CPS get involved? I saved the video without a word. Instead of responding, I called a lawyer. I didn't even tell Lenora, though she'd been my rock through late-night shifts and whispered encouragement scribbled on diner order pads. This was too big, too fragile. At the lawyer's office, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I slid the letter across the desk. He read it slowly, then looked up at me. "Mrs. Reverne, this changes everything. If this is verified, your daughter is the legal heir. Not Marla, not Verena." The room swayed. I gripped the arms of the chair to steady myself. "So, it's real?" He nodded. "It's real." Walking home that night, the city seemed different, sharper, louder. Every honk, every rush of wind from passing cars felt like a warning. I held my bag close, the letter tucked inside my notebook, pressed against my chest like a shield. When we got home, Avarice sat cross-legged on her bed, combing her hair slowly. "Mom," she asked, eyes wide, "does this mean we're safe now?" I wanted so badly to tell her yes, to promise her that the monsters had finally been caged, but the truth lodged in my throat, because deep down, I knew better. Verena and Marla weren't going to let go. They never had. I reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, and smiled softly. "We're closer, baby. Closer than we've ever been." That night, as she drifted off, I sat in the dim light of our little apartment and whispered to myself, "This letter will protect us." But even as I said it, I felt the chill in my bones. I thought the letter would protect us, but Marla was already plotting her next move. It came one hot afternoon in July. I was finishing a shift at the diner when my phone buzzed with a notification from my lawyer. A summons. The Kincaids had filed a petition contesting Agatha's will. My chest tightened as I stood in the staff hallway, the smell of fried onions clinging to my uniform. I knew this day would come, but I had hoped for more time. The following week, I walked into the county courthouse in downtown Houston. The air conditioning blasted cold against my skin, yet sweat traced the back of my neck. I clutched my notebook so tightly my knuckles went pale. My lawyer walked beside me, calm, collected, as though this were just another day in court. For me, it was a reckoning. When I entered the courtroom, I saw them. Marla sat at the plaintiff's table, her hair styled in perfect waves, her lips curled into a smug little smile. She leaned toward Verena, whispering something that made them both smirk. I forced myself to look away, but their presence made my stomach churn. The judge, a tall man with stern eyes, entered and the room rose. I whispered a silent prayer as we sat back down. "Case number 2384K, the clerk announced. Kincaid versus Reverne." Marla wasted no time. She stood, her voice smooth, rehearsed, dripping with false concern. "Your Honor, we're here because my sister-in-law, Odalyn, manipulated our late mother, Agatha, into rewriting her will. This was a vulnerable woman at the end of her life, and Odalyn took advantage. She's vindictive, emotionally unstable, and unfit to oversee this inheritance for her child." Her words sliced through the room. My heart pounded so loud I worried everyone could hear it. I kept my gaze steady, though my hands shook under the table. My lawyer touched my arm lightly, a reminder. "Stay calm. The truth is on our side." The judge raised an eyebrow. "We'll see the evidence before making conclusions, Mrs. Kincaid." The testimonies began. The child therapist took the stand first. She glanced at me briefly, offering the kindest smile I'd seen in weeks. "I've been working with Avarice for almost a year," she said clearly. "When she first arrived, she could barely make eye contact. She rarely spoke. Today, she participates in group sessions. That is not by accident. That is the result of a stable, nurturing environment provided by her mother." The volunteer coordinator followed. "Odalyn has volunteered dozens of hours at our community center," she said firmly. "She never asks for praise or recognition. She just wants a safe place for her daughter and others like her." I felt tears prick my eyes. For the first time in so long, someone was saying aloud what I'd been fighting for quietly in the shadows. Marla couldn't hide her irritation. She leaned forward, her voice cutting sharp. "It's about Jessie, isn't it?" Kids like him don't really understand legacy. The room went still. A few people gasped. Even the judge's expression hardened, his jaw clenching. My stomach turned at her casual cruelty. Jesse, my daughter's cousin, was a boy with special needs, and Marla had just dismissed him like he was less than human. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Instead, I opened my notebook, pulled out Agatha's sealed letter, and placed it on the table. My lawyer slid it to the judge. He read in silence, his face unreadable, but his eyes darkening with every line. The quiet in that room was heavier than any scream. Finally, the judge cleared his throat. "I will give my decision tomorrow." Marla's smirk faltered. Verena hissed under her breath as we stood to leave. "You evil witch! You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. I didn't even look back. I just walked out, my notebook pressed to my chest, my daughter's future clutched with it. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the courthouse steps in orange and gold. For the first time, I felt something stronger than fear resolve. The next morning, the courthouse halls were already buzzing before I arrived. I could feel the weight of whispers pressing against me as I walked through the heavy glass doors. My heels echoed against the marble floor, and though I kept my chin steady, my stomach twisted. People weren't just waiting for a verdict, they were waiting for a show. I stepped into the courtroom and slid into my seat, clutching my notebook close. Marla was already there, dressed like she was attending a gala instead of a legal hearing. She had gathered a small audience of relatives and old friends, all looking at me as though I were some villain in their family drama. Her smirk grew wider when our eyes met, as if she already knew the ending. The judge entered, the murmurs fading instantly. He adjusted his glasses, glanced down at the file in front of him, and then looked out at the room. My heart thumped so hard I could barely hear the first words he spoke. "This court has reviewed the evidence and testimony presented. The inheritance left by Agatha Raverne will remain with Averis Raverne, her great-grandson. It will be placed in a trust, administered until he reaches the age of 18. Gasps rippled through the benches behind me. I felt the air rush from my lungs in a single breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then the judge continued, his voice firm and steady. "Furthermore, due to repeated instances of harassment and emotional harm, a restraining order is hereby issued against Marla Kincaid and Verena Kincaid. They are prohibited from contacting Adeline Raverne or Averis Raverne directly or indirectly." Verena slammed her hand against the bench, the sharp sound echoing like a gunshot. "This is outrageous!" she barked, her face red. The bailiff took a step forward, warning her with a glare. Marla shot to her feet, her voice shrill, her carefully painted smile gone. "She's manipulating everyone, don't you see? She'll ruin him just like she ruined us." The judge pounded his gavel once, the sound demanding silence. "Sit down, Mrs. Kincaid, or I'll have you removed." But Marla kept on, her words spilling out like poison. "You all think she's some saint. She's not. She's pathetic, weak, a fraud, and you're going to regret giving her this power." I rose slowly, my chair scraping back against the tile. Every eye in the room shifted toward me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "You laughed when she cried," I whispered as I passed them, my words quiet but sharp enough to cut through the chaos. "Now you'll cry when we don't answer." Neither Marla nor Verena dared to stop me as I walked out. Outside the courtroom, Averis waited with a volunteer from the Children's Center. Her little silver comb was in her hand. She ran it gently through her hair, her eyes meeting mine with a small, relieved smile. "It doesn't hurt anymore, Mom," she said softly. My throat tightened. For the first time in months, maybe years, I let myself cry. Not from despair, but from release. I knelt, pulling her into my arms, holding her tighter than I ever had. From inside the courthouse, I could still hear Verena's voice shrieking, "You'll regret this, Odeline! Family is forever!" I pressed my lips close to Averis's ear and whispered, "Not this family." Hand in hand, we stepped into the sunlight. The courthouse doors closed behind us, the noise fading. For the first time in years, I felt free, but healing had only just begun. Freedom didn't arrive in a rush. It crept in quietly, like sunlight slipping through thin curtains on a Saturday morning. Weeks later, I found myself standing in the living room of our new place, watching Avarice press the keys of a small piano. The sound was halting, a little clumsy, but it was music, and it was ours. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon-scented cleaner, a far cry from the damp garage or the attic above the auto shop. We didn't have much, second-hand furniture, a thrifted rug, but it felt more like home than any mansion Verena had ever paraded us through. Warm light spilled through the windows as our neighbors, who had kindly come to hear Avarice play, clapped softly after her first attempt at Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I clapped too, though my throat tightened. Not long ago, she had barely spoken above a whisper. Now she was letting her voice, her hands, and her laughter fill the room. After the neighbors left, I poured lemonade into mismatched glasses while Avarice pulled out a drawing she'd been working on. She handed it to me with a shy grin. It was a superhero, tall, bold, eyes wide open, no longer drawn with one eye closed like the sketches she used to make. "This one doesn't need to hide anymore," she said, her small fingers smudged with pencil. Tears welled up in my eyes. I ran my thumb gently over the page. "You're right, baby. This one stands tall." As we set the drawing aside, I remembered the last phone call I'd gotten from Verena. Her voice had cracked, brittle and sharp. "We're being kicked out. Please. He doesn't even understand what a will is." There was no anger left in her tone, only desperation. I hadn't replied. I simply ended the call. After years of her mocking, her cruelty, her smugness, she had finally become irrelevant. Exactly what she had earned. I never heard from Marla again after the courthouse. Her once glamorous social media account had gone dark, her followers scattering like dust. The silence was louder than any insult she'd ever thrown at me. Later that evening, as the sun slipped low and the golden light pooled across our living room floor, Avarice came over holding her little silver comb. She placed it in my hand, her eyes steady. "I don't need this anymore, Mom," she whispered. "I'm strong now." I held it, the weight of it heavier than it should have been. For months it had been a reminder of pain, of humiliation broadcast to the world. But in that moment, I realized it had transformed. It was no longer a scar. It was a symbol of survival. I pulled her close, pressing a kiss into her hair. "You've always been strong," I told her. "Now you just believe it too." We sat there together, the piano keys quiet behind us, the comb resting in my lap. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe without fear of the phone ringing, without dread of footsteps approaching with more demands, more insults. Life wasn't perfect. Bills still came, work was still long, and I still woke some nights hearing echoes of Marla's laughter or Verena's sharp words, but those voices didn't rule me anymore. As I looked out the window, listening to Avarice's laughter drifting into the evening air, I knew the truth. The best revenge wasn't their downfall. It wasn't the inheritance, the courtroom victory, or the restraining order. The best revenge was living in a world where they no longer mattered, where my daughter could be a child again, where silence meant peace, not fear. I turned to Avarice, who was humming softly as she colored in another drawing, and whispered, "We're free." And in that quiet, I finally believed it. Final reflection. Sometimes the loudest victory is living so fully they fade into nothing,